Hello and welcome to the medieval garden.
It's now autumn and it's time to talk about what we planted over the summer in the medieval garden and how people in the past would have used these plants.
This video is all about vegetables and herbs. The primary purpose of this sort of stuff is, well, to eat it. And the diets of most normal people in the medieval period is this sort of stew stuff called pottage.
However, the literature of the time is more concerned about the plant's perceived medicinal application, as you'll hear in the video. We'll also be dropping in on ASE's archaeobotanist Elsa, who'll be taking us through environmental sampling, processing and identification. Basically, how we get the archaeological evidence from medieval plants. This year I grew vegetables that certainly would not be out of place in a medieval pottage. This includes beans, peas, and also onions and garlic, which have plenty of other uses according to medieval writers.
Onions are a staple in medieval cooking because they grow really well in Britain. In Bald's Leech book, onions are used for earache and dog bites, and this is actually what the recipe reads. For the bite of a dog, bubble up 2 or 3 onions, roast them on ashes, mingle with fat and honey and lay on the wound.
So another one of our medieval vegetables is garlic. So in our medieval garden we have some here. This is one that I grew last year. Garlic in our favourite medieval manuscript, Bald's Leech book, is used for eye ache, earache, boils, inflammation and of course our favourite devil possession as well.
To make pottage taste good, people would add herbs to it.
In our example medieval garden I have 9 herbs that are found in cookery books and herbals, but today we're just going to talk about 3 of them. We're going to talk about fennel, sage and we're going to talk about parsley. This herb is fennel. It's part of the carrot family, it's a perennial herb and it's actually really good for you and highly nutritious. In my favourite medieval manuscript, Bald's Leech book, it's used in loads of recipes, including ones for chest pain, foot ache, inflammation, poisons and burns, and of course it's also used in one for if you're possessed by the devil as well. This little plant here is called sage. It's actually part of the mint family and will have big purple flowers when it eventually does flower. It's long known to have medicinal purposes. Pliny the Elder, who is a Roman writer, actually talks about it having local anaesthetic properties. In Bald's Leech book, it's used for toothache, coughs and fever.
This is parsley. In the medieval manuscript, which has this fantastic herbal in it called the lacnungum, it specifies to use parsley seed in herbal remedies, a holy salve, and actually against evil as well.
In my quest to better understand medieval herbs and their uses, I've come to the town of Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk. In the medieval period, this was a place of money, learning and pilgrimage. Here can be found the ruins of a Benedictine monastery, built in the 11th century.
So our visit to Bury St Edmunds is to visit their interpretation of medieval herb garden. And the reason being is because one of the manuscripts that we've been looking at is an illustrated herbal, and that was written in Bury St Edmunds. It's dated to the 12th century, but part of the text is from a 4th century Roman text. What's interesting about it is it's illustrated with pictures of some of the herbs, and it's used more like a field manual. Unlike Bald's Leech book and the Lacnungum, which literally is just writing, this one could be used actually out in the field to identify the herbs you actually needed.
We've talked a lot about historical texts, and now it's over to Elsa to tell us how archaeologists can look at medieval plants.
A big part of it is to do with this flotation tank.
Hi, I'm Dr Elsa Neveu and I'm an archaeobotanist at Archaeology South East. One of the main ways that archaeologists can investigate what sort of plants people were growing in the past is by looking at plant remains from archaeological sites. These can be very fragile and hard to see on site, so pertinent contexts are bulk samples collected in a bucket and taken back to the lab for processing. Bulk earth samples are usually processed through flotation. The sample is tipped into a mesh suspended within a tank of water and then carefully massaged to wash the soil away. Heavy things like stones, pottery tree and animal bone remain in the mesh in the tank, whereas material that floats, including charcoal and charcoal remains, is collected by the flow of water and deposited in an even finer mesh called the float. Once all the soil is gone, the material in both meshes is removed and left to dry. The float is sent to the archaeobotanist to look through, whereas the mesh of heavier material is sorted by type of artifact or ecofact and sent to relevant specialists. In case of waterlogged context, a subsample is wet sieved. The sample is soaked and washed through a tower of sieves that collect material within different mesh sizes. Residue from each fraction are retained in bottle with water. Archaeobotanists then identify any plant remains to species using a microscope, then write a report on our findings, and I'll be talking a little more about these parts of the process in the next video, where I'll be looking at medieval plant remains from Barking Abbey.
As you can see, environmental processing is a large part of my job, so I'm looking forward to seeing the results from Barking Abbey next week.
Hopefully learning about how medieval peoples enriched their pottage has enriched your appreciation of common plants that you might have grown in your own garden, or maybe you're having for dinner this evening. Many of these plants have been used the same way for hundreds of years, although it's true that in modern medicine we no longer prescribe fennel or garlic for curing devil possession. Next episode, we'll be foraging along roadsides and in car parks for other medieval plants, as well as looking at the weeds that grow on my allotment over the summer. In the meantime, check out the description below to find out more about medieval herbs and vegetables in our blog post.